Hello everyone. Good evening. Tonight we are continuing Gemara Berachot. I hope everyone can have an art scroll. Actually, do you mind passing me an art scroll if you don't mind? We're going to continue from where we left off. But before that, I just want to give a quick reminder to anyone who wasn't in the shiur. We learned Gemara Rosh Hashanah for 2 years, and as part of a gift, a parting gift for every Talmud that was part of the shiur, we gave shofarot. There was that one person, Mr. Alavian. We actually haven't given you your shofar yet, so this is our opportunity to publicly give you your shofar. We're about to enter the month of Elul, so it's perfect time for you to start practicing and to make everyone around you annoyed with the sound of the shofar. Baruch Hashem, that's the mitzvah. Okay, let's go. Let's begin. Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Gemara Masechet Berachot. We're going to continue from where we left off last time, which was the topic of mishmarot. Okay, so quick reminder, because someone asked me, how did we end up talking about different points of the night last night? So you have to remember the flow of the Gemara. Tomer, if you could just yank the end of it when you're coming to close it. So the Gemara, the Mishnah told us as follows. The Mishnah asked us a question. What is the time that you start saying Shema at night? And then we discussed that at length, right? And we said at the end, the halacha is from the time of nightfall. Whatever time is nightfall, which I showed you on the calendar, is what's known as Tzet HaKochavim, which for now, it's what we say is the time that the 3 stars come out. It's a formulaic time, but that's the time that Shema starts, of nighttime. Remember, you have a mitzvah to say Shabbat at night and mitzvah to say Shabbat at day. How do you know? What's the source in the Torah of saying Shema? You have to say Shema b'shochvecha at the time that you're lying down, at the time that you get up. The start time of Shema is Tzet HaKochavim. The end time of Shema, it's a 3-way machlokes in our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer told us, anyone remember? What did Rabbi Eliezer tell us?
The end of the first watch.
The end of the first watch. Beautiful. The end of the first watch. Or the way I like saying it, the end of the first shift. This word watch is not something that's commonly used, but shift would be used. Imagine that there was 3 shifts in the night or 4 shifts in the night, and the end of the first shift is the end of the first time of saying Shema Yisrael. Okay, that's Rabbi Eliezer. Then we asked the question of Rabbi Eliezer, you're saying the end of the first shift. Why don't you just say straight to the point? There's going to be 2 opinions. We're going to see this tonight. There's 2 opinions of whether there are 3 shifts in the night or 4 shifts in the night. If there are 3 shifts in the night, when I say night, the night is always 12 hours. So how do you determine the length of each shift? Exactly. You go from sunset to sunrise, the nighttime hours, and you divide it into 12 hours. If there are 3 shifts in the night, then each shift is how many hours? 4 hours. If there are 4 shifts in the night, then each shift is 3 hours. Very good. Come on in. So Rabbi Eliezer told us the end of the first shift, and then we started to ask, well, how do you know what the shifts are? So we got into this concept, which I'm going to discuss more tonight. We got into this concept of their shifts in Shamayim, of the Malachim. The Malachim are singing their songs and serving Hashem according to their shifts. And then there's things going on in this world. Anyone remember what are the 3 markers of when the shifts end? Marker number 1? The donkey's brain. Very good. The time the Chamor No'er. Okay, and this isn't talking about the guy. There's many guys. Otherwise, you would say night is starting all the time. There's a chamor specifically at the night. There's a time which donkeys bray. The end of the second shift is when? Mr. Korvani, shalom aleichem. Love to see you. Dogs, what? Howl, not bark. Howl. There's a difference because dogs bark all the time, but it seems like there's a specific time in the night that it's common for dogs to bark. I don't know. Anyone have a dog? I don't have one, so I can't speak to this in particular. I also don't have a donkey, so 0 for 2. But then the third one, what's the third one? The end of the last shift is. Wow, Mr. Namda's all on top of it. He did this last week also. It's the time that babies are nursing from their parents, and Isham Sefertin Ba'ala, husband and wife start speaking, which means it's already people are starting to talk. The end of the night. That's the time that you know the night is over. Okay. So now that we spoke about that, these 3 shifts, let's go ahead and learn the Gemara. I'm going to share my screen. We're continuing from Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel. If you're looking in the art scroll, Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar 3A2. Very good. 3A2. It's on the column on the right in the middle. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Mishmei Derav So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Shmuel, in the name of Rav, comments on this concept that, remember, our Mishnah is talking about a shift. So here, Shalosh Mishmarot Havei Halayla. Rav tells us that there are indeed 3 shifts in the night. 3, which we're going to see an argument momentarily, but he says there are 3 shifts in the night. They'll call Mishmar, and each and every one. We spoke about what happens down here. Now we're speaking about what happens in Shamayim. Yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'sho'eg ka'ari. Hashem, at the moment, the end of the first third, the second third, and the third, at the end of the night, Hashem sits there crying, or rather roaring like a lion. But this roaring is like almost like a sigh of pain and disbelief. Ribono Shel Olam, every single night, 3 times a night, is in disbelief. Ve'omer, and he says the following: Oy li, woe to me, shecharavti et beiti, that I destroyed my own house. I had to destroy my own Beit HaMikdash. V'sarafti et hechali, I burnt my hechal, which is the place of the Kodesh HaKodashim in the Beit HaMikdash. V'higleti et banai levenu umot ha'olam, and I exiled my children amongst the nations. Pretty. What this is saying is that the fact that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed and Am Yisrael was exiled is something that pains God. It's not something that he wanted to do. Something that, quote unquote, he was forced to do because of how we were acting. The way we were acting eventually comes to the point that you have to punish your child. You have to say that enough's enough. And we were doing things incorrectly, and finally Hashem destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. But he's pained over it, and he's every single night, 3 times a night, he's crying over it. I'll tell you, Shulchan Aruch, in the first Siman of Shulchan Aruch, says the same way Ribono Shel Olam cries during these times, the same way Hashem cries during these times. It's good for Yirei Shamayim, for people who really want to tap into that pain that Ribono Shel Olam is feeling, quote unquote, for you to pray at this time, which means at the end of the first third of the night, the second third of the night, and the end of the night, to get up and to pray. Or remember, there was another opinion that says the marker is in the Emsaita, which was at midnight. So there is. Does anyone remember the word ashmurot from anywhere in the tefillah, any time of the year? I'm getting you ready for slichot season. Yeah. What do we say? Yeah. Kamti be'ashmoret levakesh al avoni. Right. That's the end of the watch. We say laila sof ashmurot. Right. There's a. I forgot the exact line. If you ask me in 2 weeks, I'll be able to tell you. But yeah, exactly, because Slichot is starting soon. Laila besof ashmurot. I get up, kamti be'ashmoret, and then you say chatzot laila kamu. A lot of these things of getting up in the middle of the night, and we use the words ashmurot a lot, and that's what we're speaking about. There are these shifts. Ribono Shel Olam is crying during those times. During the times down here, we're able to find the corresponding times. We're going to do a little bit more, and then I want to delve into this idea of what I call the storytelling of Gemara. Okay, there's 2 types of Gemarot, or there's a lot more. But in Gemara, sometimes you have things that are halachic oriented, teaching you how to do something, what time Shema starts, and that type of Gemara is a halacha Gemara. But there are other times where it's more telling you stories, and not necessarily are you going to come and take a practice out of it, but it's more of learning messages, learning lessons, learning ideas, hopefully inspire you, hopefully will teach you something to practice, but it's not a specific thing that you have to do. That type of Gemara is called Aggadah. In Hebrew, it's called Aggadah. It's not like Pesach of Haggadah, very similar, just with an aleph. Aggadah, or in Aramaic, it would be Aggadah. Aggadah is what they call it. Aggadah or Aggadah, okay? So I was just reading one of the Rishonim explained that when it comes to Aggadah, or when it comes to understanding messages, anyone can have an opinion in the Gemara, because that's not entering the world of halacha. So you could say whatever you want, and people could argue on it. Different rabbis can argue on it and say, "I don't agree with your story." But when it comes to halacha, we have a system of halacha, of how halacha has to work, and that's entering a whole different world. So what we're going to do is we're going to speak about the world of halacha, how we learn how to practice, and this is how I ended up last class. But tonight we're also going to enter the world of Aggadah. And I have to say, the world of Aggadah for many people is more fun. It's more interesting. It's also it could be more confusing and start making you ask more questions. you don't always know the answers to all of them. So for example, you could ask me right now, what does it mean that Hashem cries like a lion? Why a lion? Why 3 times? Why not 4 times? Why 2 times? Why does he say the same thing every single? It's like, look, I don't know if I'm going to have an answer for you for every Aggadah. Now, there are answers, there are discussions, there's a lot written on it. But you have to just know which genre you're entering into. Are you entering the world of Halakha or are you entering the world of Aggadah? Tonight, we're going to do some more Aggadah. Ready? Let's keep going. Fun stuff. Tanya, we have a Braita. Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef tells us the following. Let me make the screen bigger because I've heard that complaint a few times. Here we go. Pa'am achat, one time, Hayiti mehalech baderech, I was traveling. Says Rabbi Yosef, one of the Tanaim. By the way, how do I know he was one of the Tanaim? So someone said, Rebbe, that's a good idea. And also someone says, because it's Tanya, which means a Braita. So it's a time of a Braita. If this is quoted in a Braita, and it's a story from the time of the Braita, it's one of the Tanaim, Rabbi Yosef. What's the time period of the Tanaim? 0 to 200. Time period, it starts in the year 0 until the year 200 approximately. So one time, says Rabbi Yosef, Hayiti mehalech baderech, I was traveling. V'nichnasti lechurba achat michurbot Yerushalayim leitpalel. And I entered into a ruined, destroyed building that was destroyed in the times of Jerusalem. So he's talking about the times of the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. He was traveling, and as he's traveling, he sees a building that maybe it was a Beit Knesset, maybe it was part of the Beit HaMikdash. Who knows exactly what it was, but it was something that the Romans had destroyed as part of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So what did he do? He went inside to pray. It's almost like when we go to the Kotel. The Kotel is part of a destroyed wall of the Beit HaMikdash. You know that. It was part of the wall that wasn't destroyed. So imagine going to the side, somewhere where it was destroyed. He went inside of a building that was destroyed. Eliyahu Navi came to him. Oh, okay? We're going to speak about this. Eliyahu Navi comes. And he stood there by the door, watching over me. He became my bodyguard. Until I finished praying. So there I was. I had to pray mincha. It was coming time for mincha. So I went inside a dilapidated building or a building that was destroyed by the Romans. I went inside and Eliyahu Navi stood there by the door until I finished praying mincha. Once I took my 3 steps back and I finished my tefillah. Once I finished my tefillah, Amar li, Eliyahu Navi said to me, Shalom alecha, Rebbe. Rebbe, hello, how are you? Ve'amarti lo, and I responded to him, Shalom alecha, Rebbe umori. Hello to you, my Rav, my master, my sir, my someone that I'm subservient to. Ve'amar li, he said to me, Bini, my son, why did you go inside the ruined building, the building that could collapse any minute? Why did you go in there? It's dangerous. What are you doing? Amarti lo leitpalel. I had to pray mincha. I see you're nodding. You're remembering Gemara Masechet, Rosh Hashanah, and Ta'anit. We learned it twice. You were with us for that time. I'll explain. Why are you going into this building? He said, I went to pray. I had to pray mincha. So he said to me, he should have prayed outside on the streets. No, I was worried. If I pray in the middle of the street, someone's going to come talk to me, someone's going to come bother me, someone's going to come ask me for tzedakah, who knows what, someone's going to come ask me for directions, I have to say yasha, I am in the middle of my tefillah. I want to go somewhere private to pray. I don't know if you ever have to pray at an airport or something. You want to do right in the middle of everyone. I wanted to go off, so I went into the side room. Okay, so you should have prayed a short prayer. What does this mean? So Rashi explains how there is a tefillah, and this is the English, brother. There's a tefillah that's called Havinenu. Havinenu is like an abridged version of the tefillah, that during times where you can't do the entire tefillah, you would be able to use the mini version. Now, are we allowed to use it nowadays? Stay tuned, because that's a topic of discussion in Gemara Berachot, I believe Daf Kaftet. So we have some time until we get there. But for now, at least at that time, Eliyahu Navi told Rabbi Yosef, why are you praying? Why are you going inside? He said, I had to pray. So you should have prayed outside. He said, I can't focus for that long. People are going to come by. Okay, so do the short prayer outside. So what does Rabbi Yosef say? From that experience, from that episode, I learned from Eliyahu Navi, I learned from this episode 3 things. Number 1, I learned number 1, that you shouldn't enter a ruined building. In what's it called when it's abandoned? It's an abandoned. There's a word for it, no? Dilapidated is the fact that it's like falling apart, and it's abandoned property. Don't trespass an abandoned property, especially one that's been destroyed. Okay, I learned he took issue with me the fact that I went inside there. He said, "Why'd you go in?" Number two, I learned that you're allowed to pray in the middle of the street. I didn't know. I thought you had to be inside of a room. You had to be somewhere private. Out in the open, he told me I should pray. And number three, I learned that when you pray in the street, you're allowed to pray a short, abbreviated version of your prayer, which is called Havinenu. Again, just to give you a little bit of context of what this Havinenu prayer is, which we're going to discuss, is that our Amidah has how many Berachot are there in the Amidah? 18 is how much it was, and now it's 19. Very good. Very good. By the way, the fact that it was 18, Shemona Esrei, then it became 19, guess which Masechet talks about it? Gemara Berachot, stay tuned. Basically, anything that comes up, I'm not going to answer you because I'm going to say stay tuned. So Gemara Berachot will talk about the fact that there was 19 Berachot. The Bracha of Havinenu takes the first three, copy-paste, the last three, copy-paste, then takes the middle 13 and collapses it into a single bracha that just touches on every topic of the 13 in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullet point, boom. Now you have a shortened, abridged version of the Amidah, which is really 7 brachot. First three are the same, last three are the same, and the middle is going to correspond to the middle of the Shemona Esrei. So what he says is that when I told Eliyahu Navi that I had my concern about praying for so long, he said, so use the shorter version. So that's the third thing that he learned. So what are the three things that Rabbi Yosef learned? Number one, don't go inside dangerous areas of buildings that are about to collapse or have collapsed. Don't go in there. Number two, you're allowed to pray outdoors. You don't have to be inside. You're allowed to pray outdoors in the street. And number three, if you're going to pray outdoors and you're worried, you could pray a shortened prayer. Okay? These are the three things that he learned. But the story is not finished. So we're going to finish the story and then we're going to come back to the topics that he learned. So now, he was just interjecting as he's telling us the story, right? This is Rabbi Yosef. He says, one day I went, Eliyahu Navi was there. He told me these things. This is what I learned. But let me continue the story. Ve'amar li. At that time, Eliyahu Navi asked me, Beni, my son, Ma kol shamata bechurba zo? What voice, what sounds did you hear when you went into that ruined building, destroyed from the times of Beit HaMikdash? Ve'amarti lo, I responded, Shamati bat kol, I heard a voice, a heavenly voice. Bat kol, the way Tosfot explains, it's like almost like an echo. So he's saying that he heard something. It wasn't a clear voice, but he heard a voice. And what did it say? Sheminahemet kiona. It was cooing like a dove, like a sighing sound, like like the pigeons, like that. That's the cooing sound. So he heard like this cooing sound. Ve'omeret, and this voice was saying, Oy li, woe to me, shechiravti et beiti, I had to destroy my own home. V'sarafti et hechali, I burnt my hechal. Ve'igleti et banai leven umot ha'olam, and I exiled my children to be scattered amongst all of the nations of the world. Ve'amar li, at that time, Eliyahu Navi said to me, Chayecha v'chayei roshecha, what you heard is correct. And here's something I'm going to tell you. And this expression of chayecha v'chayei roshecha means I'm swearing on you and your life, meaning what you heard is so true, and what you heard is so correct. Lo sha'a zo bilvad omeret kach. It's not the only time that this voice that you heard. It's not the only time it says it. Ela b'chol yom v'yom, every single day. Shalosh pe'amim omeret kach. 3 times a day it says it. What are the 3 times? You should know from the previous Gemara. 3 times are at the end of the 3 ashmurot, the end of the 3 watches. That's why we're quoting this story. Remember, we said at the moments, 3 moments throughout the night, God roars like a lion. And as he roars like a lion, he says this exact line, woe to me that I had to burn my hechal and burn the Beit HaMikdash and had to exile my children amongst the nations of the world. Rabbi Yosef was there and he heard it. So maybe this was one of the 3 times. Maybe this happened in the middle of the night. And then Eliyahu Navi told him, yeah, this happens every single day. It's more than that. Not just this. Every time Jewish people, Am Yisrael, enters a Bet Knesset or a Bet Midrash, a yeshiva, ve'onin, and they say the following: Yehei Shemei Gadol Mevorach. They say this line of Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevorach Le'alam. I'm going to explain all of this in a moment. But when they answer Yehei Shemei Rabbah, this is to what? When do we say this? In the Kaddish. Very good. Whenever we answer to the Kaddish, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mena'anei Rosho, Ribono Shel Olam, nods his head, almost as though it's something that he's happy about, that we are saying that. Ve'omer, and he says the following: Ashrei HaMelech shemikalesin oto beveito. Kach. How praiseworthy and fortunate is a king that would receive this praise in his own home. The way Rashi explains it is that as we are there in our Batei Knesiot praying to Hashem and saying Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach, Hashem says, Kashki, this was happening in my Bet HaMikdash. If only a king was able to hear his praise in his own home, but I don't have my home anymore. Malo la'av she'igla banav. What? It's like it's a word of disbelief. How does he translate it? How great is the pain of a father who had to exile his own children? And woe to the children that they had to be exiled from the table of the father. So I want to just take a step back. There's a lot to unpack here. Okay, this is classic Aggadah. Okay, this is a classic Aggadah. There isn't necessarily a halakha here. Now there are some halachot that we learn out of it. The story, the halachot of you shouldn't go into a dilapidated building, a ruined building. You're allowed to pray on the roads. You could pray the blessing of Havinenu. But all of those, this is not the source. We have separate sources that we're going to learn from elsewhere. But what this story is saying is that there was a time when there was someone praying, went into the ruined building, and he heard Hashem crying. Actually, to be more accurate this time, cooing like a dove, like a pigeon, and crying, saying that, you think this is something I wanted to do to destroy my Beit HaMikdash? And then I hear them saying, Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach. It's part of the tefillah. I hear them saying it, and all I could think is, I wish this was happening in my own home. So this Gemara is very appropriate for Tisha B'Av. We already passed it. But this Gemara is very appropriate for that Ribono Shel Olam didn't want to destroy it. Now, a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, let's talk about this concept of, like, what is the messaging behind this? Of Eliyahu Hanavi came. Did Eliyahu Hanavi really show up to him? Maybe. So there's different ways this could happen. It could be that Rabbi Yosef was having some sort of a low-level prophecy. It could be. Now, there's no more nevuah. After the times of the Tanakh, nevuah is done, right? After the time the Tanakh is closed, nevuah is done. Was Rabbi Yosef in the times of the Tanakh? No, the times of the Tanakh ended a good 1,000 years earlier. So we don't have nevuah anymore. But there is this concept of Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh is not the same thing. It's not the same prophecy, but there is some sort of a heavenly spirit, some sort of inspiration. Is that what happened here? Oh, that's really cool. You see that? My hand is just floating there. I have to move it. So there is this some sort of a heavenly spirit of understanding. That could be what happened. It could be. You could go down that angle. The other way you could say this angle is no, not necessarily did he have a prophecy, but Rabbi Yosef is poetically teaching us a very important message, which is true. Why do I say it's true? Because Rabbi Yosef was one of the Tanaim. He knew Kol HaTorah Kula. He knew everything. He went into this Horba of Yerushalayim. He went into this ruin of Yerushalayim, and he felt the pain. He actually felt it because he's someone that is living in all of the Torah. And this is part of our Torah Shebaal Peh, is the fact that this line of Hashem is there, Hashem is crying at these certain moments, meaning there's nothing here that Eliyahu Hanavi told him that we don't know. It's not for him, right? These are all halachot that we know, messages that we know, things that we know. But what he's almost saying is, like, I went, I felt it, it was real, almost as though I had a conversation with Eliyahu Hanavi. Now, which one is it? I don't exactly know, and I'll tell you, we're also touching a very sensitive topic because there are going to be different schools of thought here. Some schools will say that yes, there was some sort of a prophecy here, light level Ruach HaKodesh. Eliyahu Hanavi showed up to him in the shape of some person. Others will say, no, all of Aggadah you shouldn't be taken literally. in general, I think you need to have a little bit of both. What that means is don't take every midrash or every Aggadah literally, because it's not necessarily meant to be taken literal, but also don't discount it and say this is some fun story that Rabbi Yosef said. It was very real. Rabbi Yosef wasn't lying to us. It could be that he was telling us about his experience and sharing, maybe making it like a poetic thing. So like I have my story. You guys ever know about the time I met Eliyahu Navi? You don't know the time I met Eliyahu Navi? I told this to you. Yeah, he ended up being a math teacher. So I can tell you when I met Eliyahu Navi, so that this way you understand like how this works. One time it was during a final season. It's okay, we can take a break. It was during final seasons at YU. I was going in to take a math test. I didn't sleep the night before. I probably slept at 4 to 6, something like that. So I was going in to take the test, and as I was going in to take the test is on the 3rd floor and of a 5-floor building, something like that. So no. I had to go to the 5th floor, okay, and someone came into the elevator who was going to the 3rd floor. So what happened is, guy walks into the elevator and he says, "How are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing excellent. I haven't slept. I slept like 2 hours in the last 3 days." I was like, "I'm doing excellent." He's like, "That's the best revenge." I'm like, "Best revenge? Best revenge for what?" He's like, "You know something? Anytime someone hurts you, the best revenge you could pay them back with is just living a great life. Just be excellent, live excellent. It's going to kill all your enemies." The elevator door opens on the 3rd floor and he leaves and it closes. I'm like, I just met Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi just came to me in this elevator to give me musar, to teach me that if someone hurts me, just live life. And that I now had to take a math test. You think you could take a math test when you just met Eliyahu Navi? So I took a math test, whatever. I got an A on the final. Next semester, I was taking a class in that building. I had to go to the bathroom, and as I'm walking down the hall, I see Eliyahu Navi is a pre-algebra teacher at YU. He's just one of the teachers there. He wasn't. He's not really Eliyahu Navi. But you see how my point is that now, am I saying that's what happened with Rabbi Yosef? I'm not saying that's what happened. What I'm saying is it's a possibility. One possibility is that it was real. He met someone. This person was Eliyahu Navi or Eliyahu Navi in the body of someone, which I'm not saying is not the case. But some people have a hard time believing that. So I'm saying there is another school of thought. And that could be that he had this experience with someone was there, someone was actually watching him by the door. And this person was coming and looking out for him and saying, "Look, you're a Talmid Chacham, you shouldn't be doing this. It's dangerous, don't go in this place." "What do you mean? I have to pray." No, so meaning this was a real conversation that he had. He didn't know the guy's name. So what did he do? He says, "Eliyahu Navi came and appeared to me." And the fact that he heard the voice, because he knew that this is what happens. When he went into the Chorba Yerushalayim, he felt it. He felt the pain. Okay, I just wanted to give that background. I'm not going to do this every time we go through an Aggadah, but I'm just like trying to give you some context of how there are different ways to study and learn Aggadah. Okay? Okay, yes. Quick question?
Yeah. Even if we assume that, this conversation between Rabbi Yossi and Eliyahu Navi is, actually them, why is it permissible for Rabbi Yossi to talk about speaking to Eliyahu Navi? It's very rare for that to happen.
So your question is, why was he allowed to talk about it if this really happened?
I don't want us to say it's above.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, you could extend that question really about any time you're expressing any knowledge. This was a Tana. This was someone that was tasked with continuing Torah Sheba'al Peh. When the Rabbanim are teaching their lessons, yeah, you're right. This is almost like someone saying like, "Oh, I have very special powers." It wasn't like that. What he was saying is like he's telling over a story to his Talmidim. And there are times where someone tells a story to his Talmidim that you see how amazing the person is, but that's he's stating the story so that he could teach the story over to his children. It's a very good question, but you don't have to. A Rav doesn't have to hide facts from his Talmidim. He's teaching them Torah. Yeah, and then we're going to move on. Question? Okay, very, very good question. No, that's not here. There's a Gemara elsewhere that you shouldn't refer to a rabbi by saying you, but you should speak to them in third person. I actually think that will be coming up later in Gemara Berachot also. So we're going to get up to that. What is very interesting here is that if I say Shalom Aleichem to you, what do you respond to me? Alechem shalom, but that's not what Rabbi Yosef did. He said shalom alecha Rabbi, he said shalom alecha Rabbi Mori. He didn't say alechem shalom. Okay, I don't know. I noticed that. I was going to look into it. I didn't have the time. Yeah, Tony, shalom aleichem. What do you respond? You just avoided the review, Mori. Okay, very good. Thank you, Tony. Your review, Mori, also. Okay, so let's continue with the Gemara. Sorry. There's one more thing I have to say about Yeshmei Rabbah. Okay, we have to say this. Okay, there's a lot of discussion here. Tosfot gets into it. Kaddish. Anyone, you know what the Kaddish is, right? So the Kaddish, what does it have to do with mourning or the fact that someone passed away? Does anyone know? What's the connection of Kaddish with someone dying? Elevates the soul. Is there any connection of the text of the content of Kaddish and someone dying? The answer is no. Kaddish speaks about the praises of Hashem. Itgadah ve'itgadash shemeh Rabbah means as following. It should, the name of God, Shemei Rabbah, his great name, his great name should be made great, Itgadah ve'itgadash, and should be made holy. In other words, we should praise God's name. In this world that he had created, and he will bring a king for us, etc. In all of your lives, I want to make Hashem's name great. We want Hashem's name to be great forever. It should be blessed, and it should be praised, and it should be glorified, and it should be exalted, and it should be lifted. A lot of words of just praising the name of Hashem, his great name. Okay? So why do we give it to Avelim to say? The answer, as you said, Tomer, is because it's such a beautiful tefillah and such a wonderful, great mitzvah to say the Kaddish that we're giving it to the people whose relatives passed away to give the zechut of this mitzvah to the person who passed away. That's really what it is. But it has nothing to do with the person, the niftar. It has nothing to do with the fact that someone passed away. Why am I saying that? Is because we see from this story, and again, it comes up elsewhere in Shas. You see in the story that saying Yeshmei Rabbah is a praise that makes Yibbono Shel Olam happy, and also makes him wish that one day we'll be able to go say it in the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind, that it's a tremendous, tremendous mitzvah. There's a lot of discussion about it. It's in a language that's not Hebrew. Yeshmei Rabbah Mevarach is actually Aramaic. And actually, if you look at our Gemara, it actually translates it into Hebrew. Look at this. You guys saw this? Did anyone notice this? Hagadol is Hebrew, but the Aramaic version is Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach. Rabbah means Gadol. Amazing how the Gemara is actually translating what we have in Aramaic. It's saying it in Hebrew. So why is it Aramaic? The quote is actually in Hebrew. So elsewhere it says it in Aramaic. Tosfot asked this question, and Tosfot says, I'll tell you why. The Kaddish, when they started to say it, they were saying it in Babel. The vernacular, the common language was Aramaic. And it's such a beautiful tefillah, they wanted people to understand it. They weren't going to change the Amidah. The Amidah was established on Sheikh Aggadah, the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. We use the same words that he uses. We use the same words that the Nevi'im put in the Nevi'im, the Anshe Knesset Aggadah established the Sidur. So our tefillah we don't change, but Kaddish is not part of the actual tefillah of the Amidah, of the Shemona Esrei. It's not part of the Shema Yisrael. It's not part of the things that are made as core mitzvot. It was something that was added later, so it's said in Aramaic. Why? Because they wanted people to understand. Unbelievable. Now I think people might understand Hebrew a little bit better than they understand Aramaic, unless you come to Gemara Shir. Then you understand Aramaic better than Hebrew. So very soon you'll all Be'ezrat Hashem understand it. Okay, let's keep going. Good. Brich Shemeh is also, they say, it was authored by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he did it so that people understand. Yeah, exactly. Very good.
Rabbi, is this a Aggadah here to prove the three ashmurot exists? Why is it here?
Okay, so David's asking a very good question. David's asking, did we bring this Aggadah to prove that there are three ashmurot? The answer is, okay, again, we have to understand the genre of Aggadah. Aggadah doesn't prove anything. Okay, at most it could prove that this opinion holds that there are three. But again, Aggadah, you could argue on because it's not halachic. You get it? So why are we quoting it now? The opposite. The reason we're quoting this now is because we just quoted the Gemara, where according to Rabbi Eliezer, there are 3 ashmurot, and according to this opinion, according to Rav, there are 3 ashmurot. So you have an Aggadah that also says there's 3 ashmurot. So now you quote the Aggadah, because it's saying the same thing that we just said, that Rav quoted first in the Gemara. It's not coming as a proof. It's coming as a
tangent.
As a tangent, yes, as a tangent, as an offshoot from the fact that we mentioned this halacha, so we now quote the Aggadah. Okay, all right, let's have some fun. This in the honor of Mr. Kevin Kashizada, I am using a Google Sheet tonight. He wanted me to use Google Sheets instead of Excel. I heard that he is a Google stockholder and he's shorting Microsoft. So it's okay. We're going to do it. We're going to help him out a little bit. Trillion-dollar companies are going to lose a little bit because of us tonight. Let's see this Braita. This Braita is going into the topic of entering ruined buildings or dilapidated buildings. And we're going to say that there are 3 reasons by halakha that you shouldn't enter one. And when you say 3 reasons, the Gemara is going to ask the question of, if there are 3 reasons why I have to go, why isn't 1 reason enough? I'm not allowed to go in. Just give me 1 reason. Why are you going to have 3 reasons? And the answer is, we're coming to cover all our bases in all scenarios. In other words, there's like a triple Venn diagram that I tried to make and I couldn't make, but I made a table instead, which you'll get the point, that there's 1 special case that each of these 3 reasons are going to teach us. Okay, ready? Tanan Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. For 3 reasons, ein nichnasin lachurba. You're not allowed to enter a ruin. A churba is known as a destroyed building, a ruined building. Ibnei chashad. What is chashad? Chashad is suspicion. If you go into like a private alleyway and someone sees you going in there, unfortunately, in these private places is where illicit activities occur, promiscuous activities occur. Over here, they translated it as prostitution. Chashad. You could really say it has to do with anything going in.
McDonald's.
No, not McDonald's. Sorry?
Like if you go into like a dark, deep alleyway, like anyone would think like
Very good, very good. I'm not talking about going into McDonald's. We're talking about going into a place that you're going into a random parking lot and just waiting there, and another car pulls up. So, okay, so something's happening. I don't know what you're doing, but people are going to assume that you're engaging in illegal activity, right? So 1 illegal activity is prostitution, and I guess this is where they would meet up. Next. What is mapolet? Mapolet is the risk of collapse. You're going into a shaky building that has been ruined. You don't know what happens. The whole thing's there's a reason why it fell. So maybe it's weak. So you're going to go in there and it's going to fall. This reminds me of a couple summers ago. I went to Miami, and I don't know if you remember, right there on Collins Avenue, there was an apartment building that just collapsed. It just collapsed. It was so scary. I saw people that were in the building at the time of collapse. They were saying Gomel at Shabbat. I saw people. It was you don't know. It's a whole experience. Our hotel, I stayed by 4 blocks away. My hotel, it was a Marriott, the Residence Inn, right there in Surfside, became the hub, the headquarters of the Red Cross. So they came in there, and there was like family members there, people that didn't have homes. People from the building were staying at our hotel. They were put up there. It was very, very what you call Del Rasha. It was not a good vacation for me at all. I really needed one, but then I needed a vacation from it. But if you recall, the rescue workers were trying to go in to rescue, to bring people out. People were saying we want to go in, and they wouldn't let them go in. Why? Because they were scared the next building is going to fall down. Until, you guys remember what they had to do? They had to detonate and bring down the other building so that they could start going in to rescue it. And all of the family members were so upset about this because the first 3-4 days, they weren't letting people go in to try to get their family and relatives out because of risk of the other building's going to fall. They had to knock down the other building. After they knocked down the building in a controlled way, then they went in. So, but it's a valid risk. When there's a building that fell down and now you're going into the ruin, you shouldn't, because there's a risk that it's going to fall. The rest of it's going to fall also. Okay, so that's what you have over here. The risk of collapse. Mazikin, again, this is a very emotional trip. I have a lot to talk about it another time. All of the people who are lost. The third one is for how do they translate it? Demons. Okay, I'm going to explain about Mazikin also. Okay, first let's explain the three reasons. Just do a quick review, and it's very intuitive. You don't go inside of a ruined building. Why? It's a private area, and as we said, I'll come to you in a second. Oh, you're going to answer?
I have a question.
Yeah. So 1 second, let me do the recap. You don't go inside of a ruined building. Number one, because that's where people would meet up with people. If you wanted to hire someone to meet up with them, they would hire them and go there. So if someone sees you going there, they're going to assume the worst, even if it's not true. Even if you're going to have lunch and you just need a place to sit, you shouldn't go there. Shalom Aleichem. You shouldn't go there for the reason number one. Reason number two, the building is going to fall. There's a risk of collapse. And number three, there's what's called a Mazikin. Mazikin are translated as the harmers, something that can harm you. Again, this goes very much in line with what I was saying before. What are Mazikin? These things that could harm you. I'll tell you like this. They are viewed in the Gemara as there's two different ways of viewing them. Either they can be these non-physical, invisible spirits that will be commonly translated as demons that can harm you. But one of the restrictions is they can't harm you if there's more than one person. So if there's two of you, demons can't harm you. That's one of the rules. Or you could say this from a lot more of a practical way of these demons, these things that are going to harm you, could be like thieves or bandits or thugs, or they could be wild animals, right? So there is some sort of a danger when you go in the night, you go somewhere without someone with you, okay? That danger is said in our Gemara, is called as Mazikin. What is the source of that danger? Either it could be some sort of a non-physical demon, or it could be getting mugged. You go into this area, you don't know what drug cartel you're walking into, and they could just now take you and kidnap you. Or you don't know what animals are in there. There could be some animals there. You're going to go into some random quiet place all by yourself in the middle of the night. You can't do that. It's dangerous. Why? Because of these things that can harm you. So you see there's a spectrum. By the way, I'm going to show you another Gemara in a couple daf, in a couple more pages, where Mazikin could very, very easily be translated as bacteria. Because again, the Gemara talks about these things where you get the sense of it's something non-physical that you can't see. And then it says how a person has tens of thousands of them around you. And it could be that you go and you get sick from them and they could harm you. You could say how this was their version of understanding of germs. Not germs like bacteria of sickness. You go into this place with dirty water, for example, you could end up getting sick. So we don't know. Yeah, the two people thing is going to be a little bit harder to explain from that. From animals, you could say, like they have each other's backs. Maybe two people could beat up a bear, or maybe one of them can see it. If you're by yourself, you can't see behind you. Maybe you could say if it's a wild animal, if there's people that are going to harm you, maybe two of you, again, you could help each other out. Going with two is going to be better than going alone. But if you say it's bacteria, I'm not sure. Maybe you would say, again, something similar. Maybe you would say something similar that if there's two of you, you could spot each other and help each other out. For example, let's say there's inside of this ruin, there's a dirty pool of water, and you don't know, and you walk in, you end up getting sick from it, or drinking it or something. And then the other guy has your back and says, no, watch your step. It could be. I don't know. But going forward, I'm going to translate this as Mazikin. In English, they translate it as demons. But what I'm telling you is that that's not a translation. That's an interpretation of this word. That's why I'm going to say it's Mazikin. But the point is something that can harm you, whether it's a person, an animal, or a non-physical spirit. The problem is the concept of demons is not something that fits well with our religion. In fact, the Torah, so much of it is telling you not to believe in this nonsense, not to believe in the black magic, and to not. So there are some that have a lot of trouble philosophically of why the Talmud, why the Gemara believes so much about this concept of demons. So that's why they say it's not demons. It's not this pagan thing. The Rambam famously discounts the whole concept of demons. He doesn't believe in it. There's one rabbi, I forgot who it was one of the Hasidic rabbis, that said as follows. No, halacha follows the Rambam. So even if demons existed back then, once the Rambam came and said they don't exist, they no longer exist. Halacha, now the demons have to listen to the Rambam. He says the halacha, so they don't exist anymore. Almost like comically saying that even if it's true, look, the Rambam doesn't believe it, so going forward, we don't believe it. So there's other Gemaras that will tell us that they Mazikin are more powerful at nighttime. Which again, you could say that's true with everything. Raccoons are more scary in the night than, whatever. You get my point. So there's a lot to go on, but there's some questions. We could ask some questions here. Go ahead.
Is it only a power that building in bacon, or is it if it's just like a random bacon building, are you allowed to?
Very good. So Ben, don't get any ideas. I don't know what you're thinking. My rabbi gave me permission. So yes, what we're now going to see is that if the building is dilapidated, then you have the concern of it going to fall down. But if the building is not dilapidated, it's just abandoned, like there's this abandoned area, then it's not a risk of it falling down, but you could have the other risks of there could be Mazikin there in the middle of the night, the harmers, or the first one of people assuming that you're going there to do something incorrect, which very, very often happens. What was it? Someone told me he had an apartment, they left his door unlocked, they were doing work in his apartment. I forgot what it was. One of these guys once told me how he bought an apartment, he was doing work and they left the door unlocked so the workers could go in, go out, paint, whatever. One night he came to his apartment and he saw like 30 kids smoking hookah inside of this apartment. He's like, get out of my apartment. They're like, you want what you want? And he's like, get out of my apartment. So I guess you leave a door unlocked, people will find the spot to do whatever they want there. It's a fun place. So yeah, there is that concern of going there. People are going to assume you're doing something wrong. You should never go in. You should never trespass. Actually, I think the mayor of one of these cities recently got arrested for trespassing someone's house and doing something crazy there. Okay, let's see the Gemara. There was another question. You had a question?
Mazikin be like maybe translated as like some sort of like negative thoughts that people might have like alone at night, like rather than with other people.
Okay, very good. So you're taking Mazikin a step further, that you're saying how maybe it's something that's even in your head or some sort of a paranoia, like people are scared of the dark and like things happen, maybe things happen. It's possible. It's possible also that maybe it's something that's even within you. It's okay. Yeah, that's possible also. That's possible also. So that's taking it a step further. Okay, just a question from the chat. Igal is asking, did Rabbi Yosef know about these three things to not enter the ruins? So the way Rabbi Yosef told us this story is that Rabbi Yosef did not know this. At least the way he was saying the story, he made it seem as though I went in there, and then Eliyahu Navi came and told me, why'd you go in there? And so I learned from that I shouldn't go in there. Now, it's possible that he was aware, and this is, again, he's just saying the story in a certain way to teach you the lessons. Why would he have done it? It's a good question. Maybe because he wanted to see it because of Yerushalayim, he wanted to feel the pain. I don't know. There's actually other Gemara about that. Good question. Igal, simple answer. You would say that no, he wasn't aware, and he learned that from the story. Okay, let's go. I wanna finish this and show my chart. Now we have to explain why each of these reasons are necessary. Why do you need all three reasons? Just give me one reason. So here we go. Let's get a running start. We learned in a bright time for three reasons you shouldn't enter a ruin. Because of suspicion of someone suspecting you of engaging in prostitution or in any illicit relations or illicit activity. Out of risk of the building collapsing. And out of danger of Mazikin coming to hurt you. So now we want to know, why do you need to have the chashad, the suspicion answer? Why don't you just simply give me the answer of the building, the fear of collapse, the danger of collapse? You don't need to give me the answer of chashad. The Gemara answers, and now we're turning to Gimel Amud Bet, 3b. Bechadati. Bechadati means it's a new sturdy ruin. What does this mean? That there are certain times that there's a building that collapsed, not because it's old and because the termites ate at the foundation. It's like, okay, you built a bad roof, so the roof caved in. But the walls are made out of cement and the walls are very strong. And so essentially what the Gemara is doing is constructing a case where you have a ruin building but there's no fear of it going to collapse. Why? Because you know it's a newly sturdy built building. Just there was some sort of a collapse for some reason, but the foundation, the integrity of the building is not a question. So if you would have just told me the answer of Mapolet, that don't enter because it might collapse, then you would have thought, oh, here's the building that I know is not going to collapse, then I'm allowed to enter. That's why you need the other answer of chashad, suspicion of you engaging in illicit activity. So the Gemara says, okay, so I understand why the fear of collapse is not enough of an answer, because then there could be a situation where it's not going to collapse, and then I'm going to think I'm allowed to go in. But what about the answer of v'tepuk le mishum mazikin? Just give me the answer of mazikin, the harmers, and then I don't need the answer of chashad, of engaging in of suspicion. Betray. There are two people. So in a situation where there are two people, as I already told you, the mazikin can't hurt the two. Mazikin can't hurt if there's two people. They don't have the power to hurt you. So now you get a situation where if two people are entering a new ruin, well, you don't have the problem of mazikin because there's two of them. You also don't have the problem of the building collapsing. Why? Because it's a new ruin. And so now you have to be left with engaging, and you still shouldn't go. The two people still shouldn't go. Why? Because people are going to assume you're doing something wrong. The Gemara says, hold on a second. If there are two people, chashad namileka, that people won't assume that you're doing something wrong, because what are two men going to go do something together? The guy's going to go do something, he's going to do it privately. He's not going to do it with his friend. The Gemara says, betray upritzi. It depends on who the two people are. If they are pritzim are people of low moral character. Someone could probably give another word for it. Degenerates. Okay? Two degenerates are two people that, another word, low lives. People that it's befitting of them to do an action with two of them together. Yeah, the two. No. Two men going to do something with a woman. They would do this, but you would have to be someone that's really debased and degenerate to do this. If you see two of them going in, then you would assume that that's what they're going to do. What are these two guys? Look, you see these two crackheads going into this corner, doing something wrong. You know that they're doing something wrong. You're not going to say, oh, there's two of them. They're going to behave in front of each other. No, they're not going to behave in front of each other. Okay, so now we see why we need to have all three cases. Okay, if you have a situation where you have two degenerates going into a new building, then since it's new, it's not going to fall. And since there's two, the Mazikin won't harm them. But since there are two upritzim, they still shouldn't go in because they're going to be engaging. People will assume they're engaging in illicit activity. Now, mind you, this is even if they're going to learn Gemara together. They're going to do chavruta still. Why? Because people are going to assume you're doing something wrong. And you shouldn't do something if it's like very rational for people to assume that you're doing something wrong. Okay? Now let's go the other way. Maybe I don't even need to learn about the building, about the collapse. The fact that I shouldn't go in because it's going to collapse, just give me the other two answers. Give me that you shouldn't go into this building because people will assume you're engaging in an activity, or Mazikin, you're going to get hurt. What does that have to do with the building collapsing? Oh, so here's the situation. Betray the keshire, two kosher people. Let's say that there are two kosher people. If they go into a building, you're not going to assume they're doing something wrong. And since there are two of them, the mazikin won't be able to hurt. But if it's a building that's dilapidated, they still shouldn't enter. Because even though they're two kesherim, the building might still collapse. So yeah, there's two of you and no one will ever assume you're doing something wrong. And since there's two of you, the mazikin won't be able to hurt you. But still, the building might collapse. The integrity of the building is at risk. You shouldn't enter the building. Okay, so now we learn the case why you need to teach me the chashad is if you have two low lives, if you will. Now, if you have two ksherim, that's why you need to give me the case. Entering a ruined building that they shouldn't enter. Ibnei Mazikin. Now, why do I need the other case? After I tell you this, we're going to look at a chart. Ibnei Mazikin. What about the answer of the Mazikin? I don't even need that one. Use the first two reasons. The reason of don't go in because people might assume you're doing something wrong or because the building might fall. why do you need to get me into this whole concept of Mazikin? So the Gemara says, here's where. Bechurba chadati uvitrei v'kashareh. Two people in a new ruin that are kosher. Okay, so let's think about this. If it's a new ruin, well, you don't have a fear of collapse. If there's kosher, you don't have the fear of people suspecting them. So the fact that you have two kosher people entering a new building, then the Mazikin would hurt them. But there's one problem. What did we say about Mazikin? They can't hurt two people. So how does that work? So this is not a case where I need for you to teach me that case. Ibitray, if you're talking about two people, Mazikin namileka. Also, the Mazikin won't be able to hurt them. Bimkoman chayshina. No. Time out. Two people, Mazikin can't hurt if they are in your territory. But if you're going to their territory, if they have home court advantage, you're going to their home, then two people can't stop them. Again, this fits very well with the concept of like bandits. You're entering a gang's area. Two people outside in your own street is one thing, but going in the middle of their corner, doesn't matter how many you are. You could be 10, they could still take advantage of you. Okay, so you see these rules of it, the Mazikin can hurt you if there's one, but not if there's two. But if there's two, if you're in their place, they can't hurt you. If not, it very much sounds like this could be like wild animals, for example, or it could be people, or it could be demons, and these are just the rules that they abide by. I don't know. Okay. Now, second answer, vi baitema. Second answer, and then with this we're going to stop and look at our chart. Leolam echad. Okay, no. You know why I need the case of demons, of Mazikin? A situation where there's only one person. Since there's one person, the Mazikin can hurt them. Okay? Ubechurba chadati. But it's a new ruin. So since it's a new ruin, you don't have the fear of collapse. The ka'eb davra, what about the fear of engaging in some sort of a forbidden act? It's out in the davra, it's out in the fields, it's out somewhere remote and open. Why? Because people wouldn't assume that you're going there out in the field to do something with a lady. Because there's no woman there. So umishum mazikin ika, but there are mazikin there. So what this is telling you is that, look, the women, they don't live in these random ruined places. They meet up there. And if you're meeting up there in a time where you have a car, a cab could drop you off, it's one thing. But if you're talking about something out in the middle of a field, and there's no way to get there easily, if someone sees you going into there, they're not going to assume you're meeting up with someone because there would be no woman that would be here. Look, it's not safe for that woman either to be there in the middle of nowhere. Someone could kill her and no one would ever find out, for example. So it doesn't happen. This is what we're saying. We're learning, unfortunately, where people will do these activities. It would be somewhere private, but close to home, not somewhere out in the middle of the field. Okay, so I want to share this chart, and this is in merit of Kevin. I made it on a Google spreadsheet. Afterwards, I could share this if you'd like. Okay, so here we go. There are three reasons not to enter a ruined building. Yeah, what are the three reasons? Suspicion of engaging in illicit acts, danger of collapse, and mazikin, which are translated as harmers, which I wrote here as it could be demons or criminals or wild animals or bacteria. Okay, so use that as a variable, as it could be one of these things. We could add Josh's idea, which is what do you call it? Your own getting into your own head. Okay, now why do you need all three? What is unique about each answer? So let's talk about why you need all three. Why you need the answer of suspicion. You need the answer of a suspicion in a case where it's a new ruin that will not fall, or I'm going to call this that will not collapse. And there are two non-kosher people. There are two non-kosher people. So you call them degenerate, I just call them non-kosher. Okay? Treif. You have two non-kosher people. So Mazikin cannot harm two people. But since they're non-kosher, you will still assume, you could suspect them of doing something wrong. So this is the case where you need the answer of suspicion. If it's two non-kosher people going into a new building, since it's new, it's not going to collapse. And since there's two, the Mazikin won't be able to hurt them. But since they're two low lives, you can assume they're doing something wrong. So they shouldn't. If these two people come to you and you know they have a bad reputation, they come to you and say, hey, can we go have a shiur there? The answer is no. Because people are going to see you, even though you want to do something good, people are going to assume the worst. And rightfully so, because you're degenerates. You tell the guy. Okay? But I'm tongue-in-cheek. Now, what's the reason of the danger of collapse? Why do I need that answer? What's unique about there? Here. It's two kosher people. So since they're kosher, you're not going to assume you don't worry about the suspicion. And since there's two of them, Mazikin can't hurt them. But since it's two kosher people going into it's not a new one, it's an old collapsed building, the building is going to collapse. There's no suspicion, and Mazikin cannot harm two people. Finally, why do we need the answer of the Mazikin? Okay, so there's really two answers. The first one is, first of all, it's a new ruin, right? So since it's new, it won't collapse. Now, how do you say how there's no suspicion in this case? Either there's two kosher people going into the Mazikin's home turf. So since the two kosher people are going there, even though it's two and Mazikin normally can't carry two, you're going to their territory, which they could hurt. Or you could say it's one person out in the field, and since it's out in the field, there's no suspicion because no one would meet them out in the field. It's far out. It would have to meet with someone closer to the city. So these are the three reasons, and this is the breakdown. Why do I love this Gemara? Look, when you're studying Gemara, one of the things that's the beauty is the form and the structure of what Gemara is doing. When Gemara gives you three answers to something, right away you should be thinking of, why wasn't one answer sufficient? Why did you have to give me an extra one? And this type of concept comes up throughout all of Shas. If you give me two reasons to something, the Gemara is going to say, tzricha, you need both. Why do I need both? Because if I would have had only this, I would have thought in that situation that. And if I would have only had that, and I would have thought in this situation this. So I need to teach you both. This is the three-way, where in all situations, if it's an old building or it's a new building, you shouldn't go in. If it's close to town or if it's far away from town, you shouldn't go in. If there's one of you or there's two of you, you shouldn't go in. If you're degenerates or if you're kshirim, you shouldn't go in. Why? Because under all circumstances, there's a problem. That's why we need to give you all three reasons. You get it? Now, the reason in each case would be different. Why can't these two guys go in for that reason? Why can't you, one person, go in for another reason? But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be going into the chorba, and these are the three reasons, okay? Yes, questions?
Couldn't have all been covered by anyways, we said that it's going in the area. So two people still cancel regardless of the building itself, anything like that. When Mazikin cover everything?
Okay, so let's think about Josh's question and let's see if we can come up with an answer. Why not just give the answer of Mazikin? Because if you give me the answer of Mazikin, what happens if there's two of you? So you said, but since you're going to their area, it would be okay. It would be a problem.
Mazikin as like
Right. So it sounds like if you remember, the Gemara gave an answer that maybe doesn't always apply. The second answer, it says it's one person out in the field. That's as if to say that if it's one person close to town, it would be you would indeed have this problem of suspicion, right? So it's giving you a situation out in the field or in the Mazikin's area. So I think to Ben's point, it's possible that there's a churba that's not in the Mazikin's area. What does it look like? I don't know. You're asking a good question. Your question is, by definition, is a churba the home court of Mazikin? That's your question. And I think you ask a very good question. If by definition it is, then you're asking a very strong question, because then you don't need anything else. I think the fact that it tells us one person going out to the field, or no, actually,
field is in a room.
well, no, it's a ruin in a field. It's a ruin out in the open as opposed to a ruin in some alleyway. So there's a difference, because if it's a ruin in some alleyway, you'll pay someone to meet up there with them. If it's a ruin out in the field, you wouldn't pay someone to meet up with them because they're not going to come there, is what we're saying. Now you're saying there's a situation. Okay, you know what? I have to look further into it. It's a good question. This question of being here, what is the art? Does the article comment on this being in their territory? So this is a 3. I have a metifta. I just don't have it with me. I'll look it up. Let's just see if what they say. Bimkoman chashinan. So it says the article, in their place, in the places where demons are known to be regularly found, we are concerned for the possibility of harm even when the two people are together. What are these places? Above, however, we spoke of a place where demons are not commonly found. Okay, so there you go. So there are, so that's exactly what they're saying. Who says this? In those places, there's only concern for the harm of one person. Okay, Tosfot. Okay, so Tosfot, it says no. It's not a definition. Tosfot asks your question. And Tosfot, very good question. You're asking Tosfot's question. Tosfot's answer is, it's not the fact that it's a ruin, and because it's a ruin, Mazikin are there. It's giving you a case where you know Mazikin are rampant. Why? Because other people have gotten there and gotten hurt. So if there's, what is it, like 8th Avenue or somewhere in the city, like people go and it's like a dangerous area, you know that crime is high there. Okay, that could actually be people crime, or it could be how there's a certain area that you go, every time someone goes, they come out hurt. It's a place where they have been, there's like recordings of them having been there before. That's the way. If you look at Tosfot, you know what? This is a good opportunity for me to show you guys how to read Tosfot. I want to show you something. Okay. Tosfot is one of, I think I spoke about this in the past, but let me show you this. The Merkava. Okay, can everyone see the screen? Yes. So this is the page of Gemara. I'm going to go to Daf Gimel Amud Bet, where we are now. So this is 3b. Okay. Sorry, Talmud Berachot 3b. Okay, so this here is the page of what the Gemara looks like. You see this? If you're looking at the Hebrew, you're going to see this middle area. All of the block print that's in the middle, what is this? This is Gemara, okay? Let's see if I could do this for you. Text. This area right here is the Gemara. You see that? This is probably not the best graphics, but look, it gets the point. This area here is the Gemara. What you see over here is what? To the left is Rashi. Inside border. Now, why I say inside border is because right now you're looking at a page that's 3b. It's the second side. And since it's 3b, it's sitting on the right side of the book. And if it's sitting on the right side of the book, the inside border is Rashi, which is to the left of this screen. But if you were to go to page 4a, where the page is on the left side of the spread of the book, Rashi is on the inside border, so he's on the right side of the page. You get that? So Rashi is always on the inside margin, inside border margin. And now, what's on the outside border margin? We'll do like this. Tosafot, outside border margin. Okay? That's okay. I'm sorry. Like whatever. You guys get what I'm trying to do. I'm sure there's a way I could make this look nicer. But that the outside is Tosfot. Now, what I want to do now is I want to read to you this Tosfot because Josh asked this question. So let's go ahead and see it. Bimkoman chashinan. We're concerned about them being in their place. Perush shiadua shiregilin shama mazikin. It's a place that you're aware of mazikin being there. It's not that since it's a ruin, Mazikin are there. No, it's a place that you know Mazikin are there. Why? People in the past have gone there and they come out hurt. Either they come out being mugged.
It's a level higher than a normal ruin.
It's a ruin that has history, that people have gotten hurt there before. Yes.
If it's not a room that has history and there's two people who are bystander, then it's not going to break. Then go in.
Yes. That's exactly what you would assume, that they would be allowed to. Correct. Or the same way how he said, what was the other case? The other case that he gave an answer is one person out in the field. So there's no suspicion out there. You still have it. So what if it's two people that are out in the field? Also, you would say it's allowed. Because since it's out in the field, even if they were degenerate people, since it's out in the field, people wouldn't assume that they're doing something wrong. So yeah, you're correct. You're finding the holes in the answers. So there is a situation where you'd be allowed to go. Very good. You're thinking the right way. You're finding the holes in the answers. Very good. Yes. Okay, very good. So Joey's asking a question of, is this applicable nowadays? So I think it absolutely is applicable. And very, very unfortunately, I gave you a concept that I experienced myself 2 years ago. When that discussion happened, there was a lot, the building was mostly Jewish. The building, this is Surfside, there's a lot of Jewish people. A lot of Jewish people were living in that building. And what had happened at the time was there was 2 apartment buildings. They're next to each other in Surfside. I think this is on 88th and Collins, if I'm not mistaken, 86th and Collins. And one of them fell down, and there's a lot of Jewish people in there. And I remember in Kaisa on Shabbat, I went to the Surfside, the shul, it's the Chabad shul, there's a shul there, and there were people there that were saying Gomel, Birkat Gomel, because they were in the building at the time that it collapsed. Unbelievable. So there were a lot of people that wanted to go in and start pulling them out, and the EMT, the firefighters, the authorities, and also IDF came. The IDF sent a group of people to go in. The IDF, this is the same group that went to Haiti. I saw them. They were eating at one of these restaurants one of these nights. 10 o'clock at night, they after a long day of work, they went and they were eating dinner out of this restaurant. So they weren't letting civilians, the children of the people the parents who lived there, the children were saying, we want to go in ourselves, start scooping these. They wouldn't let them in. So if they came to you as the rabbi and they asked you a question of, should we let them in or not? It's pikuach nefesh, it's to save someone's life. Someone's life is at risk. If you don't get them in the first 24 hours, it's very hot days. Should we let them go? The answer is you're not allowed to enter a ruin. Why? Because of fear that's going to collapse. So look, I don't want you to apply this to every single situation, but to answer your question of does it apply? The answer is yes, absolutely it applies. There's a broader thing that you learn from here. What is the broader message that you can learn? The broader message, there's like 2-3 broader messages. Number one, don't put yourself in dangerous situations. There's a Gemara Masechet Ta'anit that tells us. There's a Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah tells us. I gave a speech about it. Wow, someone remembered. That means I can't use the speech again. Shoot. Usually people don't remember it. In one ear, out the other. I just give the same shiur over and over, and people say, amazing. Yeah, I'll just give it again next year. But okay, so Gabrielle remembers it, so I can't do that again. But yeah, I gave a shiur on this topic, Gemara Masechet Rosh Hashanah, where it says that when you put yourself in a dangerous situation, it's like Mazikin avanotov shel adam, the Gemara says. It's like asking God for an audit. It's basically going to the IRS and asking for an audit. Why? Because you think that you are such a perfect person that you deserve, that there's no reason why you would get hurt. So you're gonna put your neck out on the line like this and say, Hashem's not gonna kill me because I'm a tzaddik. Really? Let's check. Let's see if you're a tzaddik. Why are you putting yourself in a dangerous situation like this? Don't think that you're above all. So this is what the Gemara says, and there's stories about rabbis that there was a story in Gemara Masechet Ta'anit where there was one rabbi, he had a lot of beer. That was his business. And once his beer was stuck in a dilapidated building. And you remember this story? So he had like warehouses worth of beer inside of a dilapidated building. He needed to get it out. So what did he do? He called Rabbi Aggadah bar Ahava. He was a rabbi, and he said, Rabbi, I want to go for a walk. You want to come for a walk with me? He says, yeah, you know what? I could use some exercise. Well, he's like, well, do a shiur. You give me a shiur, as we're talking, and they're walking, they're talking. He's giving a shiur. He says, Rabbi, let's just walk this way. They go into the building, and he's like, as the rabbi is in the building, he's getting all of his beer out, all of his beer coming out of the building. And then he says, okay, Rabbi, let's keep walking. And then Rabbi Aggadah steps out. All of a sudden, the building collapsed. He turns around and he looks at him. He's like, I can't believe you just did that. He understood exactly what happened. And the Gemara says he became upset at him. He says, you're risking my life to save you. He's like, I'm not risking your life. I know Ribbono Shel Olam wouldn't hurt you. So I asked you to come. There's no way Ribbono Shel Olam would let the building fall while you were there. I got my beer out. And once my beer out, I was like, what are you worried about, God? God wouldn't have hurt you. Don't worry. He said, that's not how you act. You don't expect God to do miracles for you. And he says that even if God is going to do a miracle for me, so it's taking away from my zechuyot. So that's the first broad lesson you learn from here. Don't put yourself in dangerous situations. Okay, I don't know if anyone here has ever gone skydiving, but the next time you do, don't ask me before you go. That's number one. Number two, you learn from here. By the way, I'm like scared of this stuff, so like I'm definitely the wrong person to ask. I don't even like going on the pirate ship at a amusement park. Okay, that's the one. The next thing you learn from here is this idea of V'yitem nikim Hashem u'Yisrael. You might say, look, what do I care if this guy's going to suspect me of doing something wrong? What do I care? I want to go into here. The answer is you need to be self-aware. And there's this concept of like perception is reality. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to worry about what everyone thinks at all times. You can't go crazy. But if you're doing something that very reasonably can be misconstrued, you need to do what you can to keep your name clear. It's important. I'll give you an example of where halakha talks us about. Let's say, for example, I'm collecting tzedakah. Okay, here Tony Aziz started a new minyan, pitched for the 8:35 next door, and every morning shacharit, after I sleep through my 3 snoozes, I get to his minyan, Baruch Hashem. 8:35 minutes, beautiful, beautiful minyan. Tony collects tzedakah. Let's say in the middle of collecting tzedakah, someone puts in 20 shekel. Someone puts 100 shekel. Now Tony might say, "Oh, I'm Israeli. I was in the army. I want to convert this myself." So what does he do? He goes inside of his pocket. He takes a $20 bill or whatever the exchange rate is. He even adds some on top and he puts it in there. Halakha says he shouldn't do it. You know why? Because the second someone sees that someone that has the money in his hand starts making some changes, they're gonna start assuming like, well, he just stuck something in his pocket. I didn't see what he stuck in his pocket. So the person who is in charge of it should be very careful. The way halakha says is that someone who was going into the treasury of the Beit HaMikdash shouldn't wear any folded clothing. Why? Someone might assume you have sticking something up your sleeves. Now you might say, what do I care? I'm not doing anything wrong. Tony might say, you think you're kidding me? I'm actually giving more. Why shouldn't I do that? The answer is because, look, when you have money in your hands and someone sees you messing around with it, it's not unreasonable to assume you're doing something wrong. So stay clear. Anytime I want to get, I go to the tzedakah box to get change. You know how I do it? I go. So anyone who sees me from far could very clearly see me put every single dollar bill like this and like showing it out. Why? Because someone might assume you're doing something wrong, and you should be careful of that. So that's another message you learn from here. So Joey, you asked the question of, does this matter today? Yes, because we're learning this conceptual concept of don't do something that people will assume that you're going to suspect you of doing something wrong. It doesn't mean you can't live your life. It doesn't mean that if you're stuck in the middle of somewhere and you have to go to the bathroom and there's a Burger King and you really have to go, that you should soil your pants or go in the middle of the street and then get thrown into prison for that reason. But what it means is you should be consciously aware and self-aware of what's going on around you. And if you're doing something that people could assume is you're doing something wrong, you should think twice before you do it. Igal is asking, is the Colosseum in Rome considered a ruined building? It's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if you really want to know, there's probably other issues with going to a Colosseum, but I don't think that's the concern here. We're talking about think about it like this. An engineer would warn you not to go into the building, right? That's the type of ruin that we're talking about. That the fire department would not let people go into there under normal circumstances. If they check the structure of the building, they see the integrity of the building is not there, they wouldn't let you in. That's why the Gemara says bechadati, in a new one, in one that's sound integrity, that the building is not going to fall, you're allowed to enter. So Igal, to your point, if you know that the building is strong because of the engineers reinforcing it and protecting it, then you would be allowed to go in there. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
The story where you see earlier on that was like a destroyed synagogue.
So it says Chorva ve'achat chorvot miYerushalayim, one of the destroyed buildings from the times of Jerusalem. It could have been in a house, it could have been in Yerushalayim, but it was something that was destroyed as part of, it was in Jerusalem as part of the destruction of Yerushalayim. Okay, with this, I just want to say one thing. Mr. Josh Aziz, who's not in the shiur, but he's in the chat, sent a message to the group. What he has this idea because he was working, it was actually my idea. We came up, he helped me develop this idea of setting buddy partners from within the shiur to study together, to review the topic. The idea that we had come up with is shiur starts 8:30 on Tuesday night. If you want 7:45, you come here, review last week's class with someone else. It gets your juices flowing. Maybe we could bring some food once in a while for someone who wants to this way to help encourage that. Or the other way to do it is like we could just help pair you guys up with different levels. Maybe we could have a stronger person and a lower person, or depending on what you want. Josh is a master at this. He's very good at being a shakhan, of matchmaking people up. I think it's something that it doesn't hurt to do. I actually encourage it. And if we do it, maybe I might pop in myself a half hour early. So if anyone's got any questions, I could also answer them. But this is something that if you're interested, follow up with Josh. We're going to hopefully announce whether we're going to do this or not. It seems like there's some interest. I think 4 people said yeah to Tuesdays and eight people said yeah to some other time. So we can help pair it up and you guys do it on your own. You have a chavruta and Itai.
6 years I'm doing it. Helps a lot. Memory. The hard things break for you too.
Yeah, the hard thing. Okay, very good. I think it's a very good concept. It helps to review, to reinforce, and to get your juices flowing. So stay tuned for details on that program. Okay? Have a great week, everyone.